Welcome to the QuickPro camera guide for shooting video with the Canon 70D. This is a great camera that will capture amazing HD video. We hope you'll enjoy learning more about it with this guide. This guide is meant to be a study tool to be used in connection with and not a replacement of your camera's owner's manual. You can watch it entirely in one sitting or by chapter. The functions and features of the 70D that we cover are designed to give you a solid working knowledge of your camera. With this new information, you'll be able to improve your ability to capture great movies in a variety of shooting settings. Let's get started. Let's begin with an overview of the basics of using the movie mode on the 70D. We'll discuss many of the camera's movie features in greater detail later in this guide. When you're recording movies or using live view with your 70D, you'll want to avoid directing the lens toward the sun, as this can seriously damage the camera's internal components. Also, depending on the compression method you're using, you'll want to use a memory card that can record either 6 or 20 megabits per second or faster. If a slower card is used, your movie may not be properly recorded. To record a movie, first make sure that the Live View movie switch is set to movie. The Live View image will be displayed on the LCD. Now simply press the AF on button or the shutter button halfway to focus. When the focus point or points turn green, the area within the focus point will be in focus. To begin movie recording, simply press the Start/Stop button and press it again to end recording. Your movie file will be saved as an MOV file on the memory card. To view a movie that you recorded, press the Playback button, and if necessary, scroll to the movie that you would like to play. Press the Set button to view the movie playback options. Select Play and press Set to begin movie playback. Although you'll probably want to do most of your movie editing on your computer, you can also do some basic movie editing in camera. To edit a movie, begin the movie playback. At the point that you'd like to have your clip start or end, press the Set button to pause the movie. Then use the touch screen or multi-controller to select Edit from the playback mode options. Here you can select Cut Beginning or Cut End. Press Set. Now you can use the multi-controller to fast forward or rewind the movie. The portion of your movie that is shown in gray in the playback position bar is that what will remain. Press Set and select Save. Here you can choose New File, Overwrite, or Cancel. We'll select New File. Press Set and select OK. Note that selecting Overwrite will erase the original movie and will replace it with the edited version. There are many important movie mode settings that can be accessed in the camera's menu system. To access these settings, first make sure that the Live View movie shooting switch is set to movie. Then press the menu button. Use the multi-controller to navigate to the first movie shooting menu. We'll discuss each of the movie menu items in greater detail later in this guide. The first item in the first movie shooting menu is AF Method, where you can choose the autofocus method for movie shooting. Next, there is Movie Servo AF, which will allow you to enable or disable continuous autofocusing in movie mode. Next, there is Silent Live View Shooting, which will allow you to choose from two different options. Next, there is Metering Timer, which will allow you to choose how long you'd like the exposure settings to be displayed on the LCD monitor. The second movie shooting menu begins with Grid Display, where you can choose from 3 different grid displays to assist in framing and composition. Next, there is Movie Recording Size, where you can choose the movie resolution, frame rate, and compression method. Next, there is Digital Zoom, which will allow you to enable or disable the digital zoom for movie shooting. Note that this option is only available when the camera is set to one of the 1920 by 1080 movie image size options. Next, there is sound recording, which will allow you to make adjustments to the built-in microphone settings when the mode dial is set to one of the creative zone modes. Next, there is time code, where you can choose the way you'd like the time code to be recorded. The last option in the second movie shooting menu is Video Snapshot, which will allow you to create interesting and creative video albums with multiple short clips to show highlights from an event. Before you get started recording movies with your camera, there are a few things that you'll want to know about movie recording settings, including frame sizes, frame rates, and compression methods. It's important to understand a little about each of these options so you can choose the best settings for your situation. First, let's talk about the frame size or resolution options that are available on your camera. You can record movies in two different resolutions, 1920 by 1080 and 1280 by 720. Each resolution is indicated by the number of pixels that are in the frame. So 1920 by 1080 means that the image is 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels tall. This resolution has an aspect ratio of 16:9. Movies that are recorded at 1280 by 720 are only about 2/3 the width of a 1920 by 1080 movie, and they also have an aspect ratio of 16:9. So what's the trade-off? Movies that have more pixels, like the 1920 by 1080, provide a much crisper image, but they also create a much larger file size. Now let's talk about frame rate. Frame rate refers to the number of images that are recorded per second. The 70D allows you to choose from several different frame rates, depending on the frame size that you have selected. It's important to note that frame rate does not affect exposure. When you're choosing a frame rate for your movies, you'll want to understand what effects different frame rates will have on the finished movie. A higher frame rate, like 60 frames per second, is great for capturing fast action videos. It allows you to see the action with much better clarity and crisp detail. A slower frame rate, like 24 frames per second, will give your video a softer look. Traditional film movie cameras record at 24 frames per second, and this frame rate has the distinctive cinema look that you would associate with the big screen. Whatever frame rate you choose, you'll want to remember a higher frame rate equals a larger file size. To access the camera's movie recording settings, first make sure that the Live View movie recording switch is set to movie. Then enter the camera's menu system and navigate to the second movie menu. Here, select the movie recording size option. The four options on the left are the camera's full HD 1920 by 1080 options. The top two options on the right side of the screen are the camera's 1280 by 720 settings. These settings are good for times when you want to have high-quality video, but it doesn't need to be full HD. This recording size could be used for family home movies or similar scenarios. The last option is 640 by 480. This is a lower resolution setting that is good for when you know that you only want to use the movie for emailing or posting online. For each of the different options, this number indicates the frame rate. For the 1920 by 1080 settings, you can choose from 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second. For both of the 1280 by 720 options, the frame rate will be 60 frames per second. And for the 640 by 480 setting, the frame rate will be set to 30 frames per second. In addition to resolution and frame rate, you should also know a little about the two compression methods available on the Canon 70D. The first compression method is IPB, which will compress multiple frames at once for more efficient recording. Movies recorded with the IPB compression method will be smaller file sizes. When you're using the IPB compression method, you'll want to make sure that you use a memory card that can record 6 megabits per second or faster for proper recording. The other compression method is all-I, which will compress the frames one at a time. Movies recorded with the all-I method will be larger files than those recorded with the IPB method, but they are better suited for editing. When you're using the all-I compression method, you'll want to make sure that you use a memory card that can record 20 megabits per second or faster for proper recording. Now let's discuss exposure. Exposure is the term used to refer to the overall brightness of the image or movie. When an image or movie is too bright, it's overexposed. When it's too dark, it's underexposed. The exposure of the movie is determined by 3 different camera settings: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. When all 3 of these elements are in proper balance, your movie will be properly exposed and have good detail in the shadow and highlight areas. Let's first take a look at shutter speed and how different settings will affect the look of your movie. Similar to still photography, the shutter speed will help to determine the sharpness of the motion in your movie. Also, like in still photography, the shutter speed will impact the overall exposure or brightness of the movie. When you're using the camera's movie mode, you can adjust the shutter speed when the mode dial is set to manual shooting. Then make sure that the live view movie shooting switch is set to movie. Press the shutter button halfway down to view the exposure level indicator. Now rotate the main dial to select the shutter speed. As you're making your selection, watch the exposure level indicator. When the indicator is near the center of the scale, the movie will be properly exposed. To create smooth motion, a good rule of thumb for shutter speeds when shooting movies is to use the 180-degree shutter rule. This rule simply states that you should first multiply the frame rate by 2. So 24 frames per second frame rate multiplied by 2 would be 48. Next, simply put a 1 over the number. So you would have 1 over 48. Since there's not a 1/48th of a second shutter speed, you would choose the next closest number, which would be 1/50th of a second. If you were shooting at a 30 frames per second frame rate, you could choose 1/60th of a second for a shutter speed. And if you were shooting at a 60 frames per second frame rate, you could choose 1/120th of a second for a shutter speed. Using the 180-degree shutter rule will help you ensure that your movie will have smooth motion with minimal blur. Sometimes you may want to use a different shutter speed if you're trying to create a specific effect in your movie. For example, if you want to intentionally use motion blur for creative effect, you would want to choose a slower shutter speed. Or if you want to give your movie an edgy look and feel, you could choose a very fast shutter speed. Now let's take a look at aperture and how different settings can have different effects on your movie mode. Similar to still photography, the aperture will help to determine the depth of field in your movie. Depth of field is the term used to describe the distance between the nearest and farthest objects in a scene that appear acceptably sharp in an image. When only a small area or subject in the movie is in focus, it's said to have a shallow depth of field. This effect is achieved by a smaller f-stop number. When everything in both the foreground and background is in focus, the movie is said to have a long depth of field. For a long depth of field, choose a larger f-stop number. Also, just like in still photography, the aperture setting will impact the overall exposure or brightness of the movie. To select an aperture setting in movie mode, first make sure that the mode dial is set to manual shooting. Then press the shutter button halfway to view the exposure level indicator. To choose an aperture setting, rotate the quick control dial. As you're making your aperture selection, you'll want to watch the indicator to make sure that the movie will be properly exposed. After you have selected the shutter speed and aperture settings to your liking, you may find that the exposure or overall brightness of the movie needs to be adjusted. To do this, you can make adjustments to the ISO setting. To change the ISO setting on the 70D, press the ISO button. The ISO quick control will appear on your screen. You can use the main dial to make your selection. When you're using the camera's manual shooting mode, you can choose from ISOs ranging from 100 to 12,800. There is also an auto ISO setting that will choose the ISO automatically for you. When you have this setting selected, you can lock the current ISO sensitivity by pressing the AE lock button. As with still shooting, the ISO setting controls the image sensor's sensitivity to light. The higher the number, the less light that is required for a properly exposed movie. The lower ISO settings, like 100 and 200, have less sensitivity, and the higher settings, like 800 and 1600, have more sensitivity. So if the movie appears too dark, you'll want to choose a higher ISO setting to increase the overall brightness and create a properly exposed movie. Always try to set the ISO speed to suit the lighting conditions you're shooting in. If you're shooting in an area with plenty of light and you can use a lower ISO setting, your movie will have less digital noise or grain. When you increase the ISO speed to a higher number for low light, a narrower aperture can be used. Keep in mind, however, that the higher the ISO setting, the more digital noise or grain will be introduced into your movies. You'll want to experiment with your camera's ISO settings to become familiar with their range and control. Here's a guide that will help you have a basic idea of what ISO settings to use in various situations. When you're outdoors in full sun, use ISO 100 to 200. In the shade, on an overcast day, or indoors with lots of window light, use ISO 400. ISOs 800 and higher should be used indoors for action shots or in other low light conditions. The level of digital noise will depend on the ISO setting. Typically, digital noise starts to become noticeable at ISOs of 1000 or higher. If you're shooting a movie and you find that the digital noise is too noticeable, you can make adjustments to the aperture and shutter speed settings to enable you to select a lower ISO number to reduce the digital noise and still have a properly exposed movie. Choosing a smaller f-stop number will allow more light to enter the camera, which will reduce the need for a higher ISO setting. If a smaller f-stop number is not available, or if a smaller f-stop number will not provide the depth of field that you need for your scenario, you may be able to make adjustments to the shutter speed. Choosing a slower shutter speed will allow you to use a lower ISO setting in these scenarios, which will help reduce the digital noise in the movie. As discussed, a general rule is to choose a shutter speed that is double the frame rate. However, there may be times that a slower shutter speed can be used to create a small amount of motion blur for artistic effect in your movie. If a slower shutter speed will not give you the effect that you need for your scenario, and the aperture setting also cannot be adjusted to allow more light to enter the camera, you can try to increase the light in your scene using studio lighting, moving to an area with more window light, or even using lamps in your home. Exposure compensation is a great tool that will allow you to adjust the overall brightness in your movie. Exposure compensation is available in the camera's programmed auto, shutter priority, or aperture priority modes. To adjust the exposure compensation, simply rotate the quick control dial. The level of exposure compensation is shown on the level at the bottom of the LCD. Values with a plus sign will make the movie brighter, and values with a minus sign will make the movie darker. You can select the increments ranging from -5 to +5. When you're shooting movies with your 70D, there are several ways to ensure good focus. The camera's sophisticated autofocus system will help you get good focus in many situations, but there may also be times when you find that you need to use manual focus to ensure that focus is as you intended it. Let's discuss the autofocus options now. In movie shooting, there are 3 different AF methods to choose from: Face Tracking, FlexiZone Multi, and FlexiZone Single. To choose the AF method, simply press the Quick Control button and select the AF method setting. Here you can choose from any of the 3 Live View AF methods. The first AF method is face tracking. In this mode, the camera will find and focus on human faces in the scene. If a face that the camera is focusing on moves, the AF area will track the face to maintain focus. If multiple faces are detected, you can use the multi-controller or touchscreen to select the face you'd like the camera to focus on. If the camera does not detect any faces in the scene, it will automatically switch to the FlexiZone Multi-AF method. To focus, press the AF on button or the shutter button halfway down. The AF point will turn green and a beep will sound. Then simply press the Start/Stop button to begin recording. The next AF method is FlexiZone Multi. In this mode, you can choose to have the camera use the wide area, or you can select one of 9 AF zones. To toggle between wide area and zone, press the Set button or the Erase button. When the wide area is used, the camera will automatically focus using one or several of the 31 AF points when the shutter button is pressed halfway. If the camera does not focus on the desired subject, you can use one of the 9 zones. When zone is selected, you can use either the multi-controller or touchscreen to select the desired zone. When one of the zones is selected, the camera will automatically use only the AF points that are in the selected zone for focus. Again, press the AF on button or the shutter button halfway down. When the AF points appear in green and the beep sounds, press the Start/Stop button to begin recording. The last AF method is FlexiZone Single. With this mode, a single AF point is used to focus the subject, which makes it easy to focus exactly where you intended. You can use the multi-controller or touchscreen to place the AF point anywhere on the screen. Then simply press the AF on button or the shutter button halfway down, and when the AF point turns green, the Start/Stop button to begin recording. Another autofocus feature that you can make adjustments to in movie mode is Movie Servo AF. To access the Movie Servo AF settings, enter the camera's menu system and navigate to the first movie shooting menu. Here, select Movie Servo AF. When enabled, Movie Servo AF will automatically focus continuously, even when the shutter button is not pressed halfway. However, you may find that the Movie Servo AF creates unwanted audio noise from the lens drive movement, or that the battery is depleted more rapidly when it's enabled. To eliminate the lens drive noise, you can use an external microphone. To improve battery life, you can disable the Movie Servo AF. Note that if you'd like to switch to manual focus when Movie Servo AF is enabled, you should first switch the Live View movie shooting switch to Live View. You can also temporarily enable or disable the Movie Servo AF while you're shooting by tapping the Movie Servo AF icon on the touchscreen. When you're shooting movies with the 70D, you may find that there are times when the autofocus does not provide the sharpness or clarity that you're looking for. In these situations, using the camera's manual focus can help you get sharp focus. To use manual focus on the 70D, you'll first want to switch the focus switch on the lens to MF. Now you can simply rotate the focus ring on the lens until the image on the LCD is in sharp focus. You may find that it's difficult to see whether or not an area in the image that you'd like to be in sharp focus is sharp. The camera has a magnified view feature that makes it easier to adjust the focus for detail areas prior to shooting movies. To use this feature, make sure that the camera is in movie mode and that the camera is set to use manual focus. Frame the image on the LCD monitor. Now you can press the magnify button, or you can touch the magnified view icon on the touch screen. Pressing the button once will activate the magnified view. Pressing the button a second time will zoom to 5 times, and pressing the button a third time will zoom 10 times. Use the multi-controller or the arrows on the touchscreen to scroll to the area that you'd like to be in focus. Rotate the focus ring on the lens until the magnified area is in sharp focus. Then simply press the Start/Stop button to begin recording. When recording begins, the camera will automatically exit the magnified view. Just as with still image shooting, the quality of your movies will be impacted by the white balance and overall color and tone of the movie. You can use the camera's white balance and picture controls to adjust the color and tone to your liking. White balance is determined by the color temperature of light sources, which is measured in degrees Kelvin. The higher color temperatures in the area of about 7,500 Kelvin to 5,600 Kelvin are usually found in situations like a sunlit or cloudy day. These shooting situations have a greater amount of cool blue tones and a lesser amount of warm red tones. To compensate for the coolness of the color, the camera will add warm tones to help balance the color temperature. Lower color temperature situations are measured in the area of 3,500 Kelvin down to 1,900 Kelvin and are found in lighting situations like standard lighting from a tungsten light bulb or candlelight. These types of shooting situations are found on the lower end of the spectrum and produce greater amounts of warm red tones and lesser amounts of cool blue tones. To access the white balance settings, press the Quick Control button and select White Balance on the Quick Control screen. Here you can press the sides of the multi-controller to select the option you'd like. The first option is Auto White Balance. With this setting, the camera will automatically adjust the white balance to compensate for the color temperature. The next white balance setting is Daylight. Daylight is a great setting for taking pictures in the sunlight. This setting is marked with a sun icon. Use the Shade setting when you're taking pictures in the shade. It reduces the bluish tones in a picture. This setting is marked by an icon with a house with shade. Use the Cloudy setting when taking pictures on days that are overcast. This is marked with a cloud icon. The next white balance setting is Tungsten Light. This is a good setting to use when you're taking pictures under common light bulbs. It reduces the reddish tones in a picture. This setting is marked with a light bulb icon. The White Fluorescent Light setting is great for taking pictures under common fluorescent lighting. The next setting is the Flash setting. Use this setting when you're using the built-in flash or an external flash unit. The next icon is the Custom White Balance option. Use this setting when you want to manually set the white balance for a specific light source for the best accuracy. The last option is Color Temperature. Use this setting when you know the color temperature of the light that you're shooting under. To select the color temperature, press the Info button and use the multi-controller to make your selection. Let's walk through setting a custom white balance on the 70D. First, you'll need to take a picture of a plain white object in the lighting that you're shooting under. You can use a white card, an object like a shirt, or a piece of paper to achieve good results. Now you'll need to set that image as the custom white balance reference. This is done in the menu system under the third shooting menu. Here, select Custom White Balance and select the photo of the white or gray object. Press Set and select OK. Then press Set again to confirm the custom white balance setting. Picture styles are an intuitive way for you to customize the look of your movie and tell the camera what levels of sharpness, contrast, and saturation and color tone that you'd like for your specific shooting scenario. Note that the picture styles are available only when the camera is set to one of the creative zone modes. There are 7 different preset picture styles, and you can make adjustments to the settings in each of them. To access the picture styles, press the Quick Control button and select the picture style icon. Then use the multi-controller, Quick Control dial, main dial, or touch screen to make your selection. First, there is the Auto Picture style. This is a good general use picture style. The camera will automatically adjust color tone to fit your scene. This is a good picture style for videos of greenery, nature, outdoors, and sunset scenes. The standard picture style is also a good general use picture style, and it's suitable for most scenes. Videos taken with this picture style will look vivid, sharp, and crisp. The portrait picture style is great for videos of people, particularly close-ups. It offers pleasant skin tones and it makes the videos appear a little softer. The landscape picture style is great for taking videos of scenery outdoors. This picture style makes the greens and the blues of the videos more vivid. The neutral picture style produces colors that are natural and subdued. The faithful picture style will also make the colors in the video overall dull and subdued. When shooting under normal daylight, the color is adjusted to match the subject's color. The monochrome picture style is useful when you would like to shoot black and white videos. All of these picture styles are fully customizable. Select a picture style that you'd like to customize and press the Info button. You can make changes to the sharpness, contrast, saturation, and color tone. Select a parameter that you'd like to make adjustments to and use the sides of the multi-controller to adjust the setting. In addition to the 7 preset picture styles, there are also 3 user-defined picture style options. These options allow you to select and adjust a picture style to your liking and save it for future use. Registering a user-defined picture style is very similar to customizing a picture style, but with a few minor changes. First, select a user-defined picture style and press the Info button. Use the sides of the multi-controller to choose a base picture style. Now use the top and bottom of the multi-controller to select a parameter, and use the sides of the multi-controller to make adjustments to that parameter. When you're finished, simply press Set to exit the Quick Control screen. The 70D has a feature called the Auto Lighting Optimizer. With the Auto Lighting Optimizer, you can improve contrast in detail and shadow areas of your videos automatically when the camera is set to one of the creative zone modes. You can access the Auto Lighting Optimizer in the Quick Control screen. Press the Quick Control button and select the Auto Lighting Optimizer setting. Here you can select Disable, Low, Standard, or High. If you choose Low, some shadow areas will be improved. If you select High, most of the shadow areas will be improved. Videos may have increased noise with this feature, depending on the scenario. You can press the Info button to choose whether or not you'd like to have the Auto Lighting Optimizer disabled in the manual and bulb shooting modes. Note that if you're using exposure compensation to darken the image while the Auto Lighting Optimizer is active, the exposure compensation may not work as intended, and you may need to disable the Auto Lighting Optimizer. Now let's take a look at each of the items in the movie shooting menus. Make sure that the Live View movie shooting switch is set to Movie and press the Menu button. Use the multi-controller to select the first movie shooting menu. The first 2 menu items are AF Method and Movie Servo AF. Each of these items are discussed in detail in Chapter 4 of this guide. Next, there is Silent Live View Shooting, with options for Mode 1, Mode 2, and Disable. Silent Live View Shooting will allow you to choose the mode for taking still images in movie mode. When Mode 1 is selected, the shooting operation will be much quieter than normal, and the high-speed continuous drive mode can still be used. When Mode 2 is selected, only one shot will be taken when the shutter button is pressed, and holding the shutter button down will suspend the camera's operation, making it possible to keep the camera silent for a period of time in very quiet surroundings. The Disable function is for use with specialty TSE lenses to assure proper exposure. The last item in the first movie shooting menu is Metering Timer. which will allow you to select the length of time you'd like the camera's exposure setting to be displayed. Now let's take a look at each of the items in the second movie shooting menu. First, there is Grid Display. Here you can choose to have one of 3 different framing grids displayed on the LCD monitor to help with composition. You can choose 3x3, 6x4, and 3x3 plus diagonal. To view the framing grid, simply press the shutter button halfway to exit the menu system. The next item in the second movie shooting menu is Movie Recording Size, where you can choose the movie resolution, frame rate, and compression method. Each of these options are discussed in detail in Chapter 2 of this guide. Next, there is Digital Zoom. With the 70D, you can use the Movie Digital Zoom when the recording size is set to one of the 1920 by 1080 options. Digital Zoom will allow you to zoom in beyond the zooming capabilities of the lens. To use the Digital Zoom, select the 3 to 10x zoom option and then press Set. Press the shutter button halfway to exit the menu system. This icon indicates that the digital zoom is active. You can simply press the top and bottom of the multi-controller to adjust the level of digital zoom, both before you start recording as well as during recording. If you use the digital zoom during recording with the Movie Servo AF enabled, the camera will continuously automatically focus as the level of zoom changes. The next menu item in the second movie shooting menu is Sound Recording. Each of these options are discussed in detail in Chapter 7 of this guide. Next, there is the timecode option. The timecode is the way that a time reference is recorded with the movie, and it's used to synchronize the video and the audio. The way that the timecode is recorded can be customized for your needs. There are 5 different menu items to customize. First, there is the Count Up option. For Count Up, you can choose from Record Run or Free Run. If Record Run is selected, the timecode will only count up when you're actually recording a movie. If Free Run is selected, the timecode will count up regardless of whether or not you're recording. The next option in the timecode menu is Start Time Setting. For this option, you can choose from Manual Input Setting, Reset, or Set to Camera Time. If you select Manual Input Setting, you'll be able to set the hour, minute, and second freely. If you select Reset, the time for both Manual Input Setting and Set to Camera Time will be reset. And if you select Set to Camera Time, the hours, minutes, and seconds will be set to match the camera's internal clock. The next 2 menu items in the timecode menu are the Movie Recording Count and Movie Playback Count. For both of these options, you can choose to have either the recording time or the timecode displayed on the LCD monitor. If recording time is selected, the time that has elapsed since the beginning of the movie recording or playback will be displayed. If timecode is selected, the timecode will be displayed. The last menu item in the timecode menu is Drop Frame. When enabled, the Drop Frame option will automatically correct the discrepancy in the timecode that is caused when certain frame rates are used. The last menu item is Video Snapshot. This feature allows you to create a series of short 2, 4, or 8-second video clips and then save them to an album on the memory card. The clips in the Video Snapshot album can be combined to create an interesting and creative short movie. To use the Video Snapshot feature, select Enable. Now select Album Settings, create a new album, and here you can select the snapshot length. Now select OK. To create the first video snapshot, press the AF On button or the shutter button halfway to focus. Then press the Start/Stop button to begin recording. When the snapshot has finished recording, the camera will prompt you with options to save as an album, play back the snapshot, and do not save as album. Select Save as Album. The camera will return to the movie shooting screen, and you can record the next snapshot. Now the options are Add to Album, Save as New Album, Playback Video Snapshot, and Delete without saving to album. We'll select Add to Album. You can shoot up to 8 video snapshots to be combined into an album. To playback or edit an album, press the Playback button and use the multi-controller to select the album to play back. Playing and editing albums is done in the same way as playing and editing normal movie files. In the default movie shooting display, several important shooting settings are shown. Note that the items displayed will vary depending on the shooting mode that you have selected. We'll be showing the information that is displayed when the camera is set to manual mode. Here you'll see the shutter speed, the aperture, the exposure scale, the ISO setting, the magnified view icon. At the top of the screen, you'll see the possible shots, the maximum burst, the movie shooting remaining time, the battery check, and the quick control icon. To show another shooting functions display, press the Info button. In addition to the settings that were previously displayed, you'll see the shooting mode, the AF mode, the drive mode, the movie recording size and compression method, the digital zoom, the white balance setting, the picture style, the auto lighting optimizer setting, the video snapshot icon, and the exposure mode. Pressing the Info button again will display a real-time histogram of the scene and help you monitor the overall exposure. Pressing the Info button once more will display a digital electronic level. And pressing the Info button again will remove all the icons from the display. In live view, you can access the quick control screen to change a variety of shooting settings. To access the quick control screen, press the quick control button or tap the quick control icon. You can use the multi-controller or touchscreen to make selections. An important part of a great movie is the audio. The Canon 70D has a built-in stereo microphone for recording sound in movie mode, and it also has a connector that will allow you to use an external microphone. Let's discuss the camera's audio recording features now. The built-in microphone will record sound automatically by default. To access the camera's microphone settings, press the Menu button, enter the second movie menu, and select Sound Recording. Here you can select Auto, Manual, or Disable. The Auto Sensitivity option is a good setting to choose when you want the camera to automatically determine proper audio levels. When auto sensitivity is used, the camera will attempt to keep the audio level in a good range to avoid clipping, which is when the sound becomes distorted. When you're using the auto sensitivity microphone option, the camera will compensate for very loud or very quiet sounds by bringing everything to an average level. If you select manual, you can adjust the recording level to suit your needs. You can use the multi-controller to choose the level you'd like. A good general rule of thumb is to keep the audio levels in the white or yellow range, usually between -12 and 0 dB. This range will help ensure that your sound in the movie is not clipped or distorted. You can also choose whether or not you'd like to have the wind filter or attenuator to be enabled. If you're shooting movies outdoors in windy conditions, enabling the filter will reduce wind noise. If there is no wind noise, or you're shooting indoors, you'll want to disable the filter, as the sound will be more natural than it would be if the filter were enabled. When enabled, the attenuator will reduce sound distortion when audio recording. If you have selected manual sound recording in the menu system, you can make adjustments to the recording levels in the Movie Quick Control screen. To do this, simply press the Quick Control button and use the multi-controller to select the audio recording level option. Here you can use the sides of the multi-controller to make adjustments to the audio recording level. When you're recording movies, you may find that the built-in microphone records the sound from the lens focusing or the controls being accessed on the camera body. For better quality audio, you can connect an external microphone to the camera for movie recording. The 70D has a standard 3.5mm microphone connector. If you'd like to record professional audio in movie mode with your 70D, you may want to consider purchasing an external XLR adapter. With the wide variety of lenses in Canon's current lineup, it can seem overwhelming to know what lens or lenses will help you with the type of videography that you're doing. Note that there are some Canon lenses that are referred to as L-series lenses. These lenses are known for their stunning clarity and performance. These lenses are differentiated from other lenses with a bold red ring around the barrel. Let's talk a little about lenses and apertures. When shopping for a lens, you'll notice that all lenses have a maximum aperture or f-stop. Smaller numbers like f1.4 or f2.8 are considered to be faster lenses because they allow a lot of light into the camera. If your lens has a range of apertures, note that the largest aperture can only be used at the widest focal length. This is how the aperture or aperture range is indicated on a lens barrel. The number or numbers following the 1: indicate the aperture or aperture range. The maximum aperture of the lens is important to keep in mind when you're shopping for a lens, especially if you're planning on shooting movies in low light conditions, doing action or sports videography, or if you're looking to create movies with a very shallow depth of field. After the maximum aperture of the lens, the next thing that you'll need to consider is the focal length. Canon lenses are available in a wide range of focal lengths, each with its own benefits and uses. The focal length on a lens is the first series of numbers on a lens barrel, and it's measured in millimeters. This lens, for instance, is an 18 to 55 millimeter lens, or the focal lengths range from 18 millimeters to 55 millimeters. Lenses that have a range of focal lengths, like this 18 to 55 millimeter, are zoom lenses. Zoom lenses have the ability to get closer or farther away from the subject without ever actually moving the camera. Lenses that have only one focal length, like a 50 millimeter 1.8 lens, are called prime lenses. Prime lenses do not have zooming capability, but many professional videographers prefer them because of the great clarity they offer. With this understanding of focal lengths in millimeters, we can discuss some of the different ranges of focal lengths as well as the lens categories that different focal lengths fall into. Typically, lenses that are less than 50 millimeters are considered to be wide-angle lenses. So the 18 to 55 that we just talked about could fall into the wide-angle range because it can zoom out to 18 millimeters. Wide-angle lenses are great for landscape shots, as well as situations where space is limited and you want to include as much of a scene as possible. Mid-range or normal lenses typically have between 50 and 85 millimeters. This range of focal lengths is great for family snapshots, portraits, and vacations. The 18 to 55 lens also falls into the mid-range category. These lenses are often referred to as walk-around lenses because they're so versatile and can be used for a variety of subjects and shooting scenarios. Telephoto lenses are lenses with over 85 millimeters and are great for getting closer to your subject. Sports and wildlife videographers use telephoto lenses to extensively zoom in on the subject. Telephoto lenses are great for getting amazing close-up shots of flowers or other small objects. If you're shooting videos of very small objects and you want to have the ability to capture even the smallest details, you'll want to look into a dedicated close-up or macro lens. The focal lengths for dedicated close-up lenses range between about 50 millimeters and 200 millimeters. In addition to apertures and focal lengths, there is one more important feature that you should consider when you're shopping for a Canon lens: image stabilization, or IS. Image stabilization will help you get crisp movies when you're hand holding the camera. If you're using a tripod, you'll probably want to turn image stabilization off. We hope you've enjoyed learning more about your Canon 70D. We know this new information will give you the confidence and know-how to get the most out of your camera. Remember, you can refer back to any section of this guide at any time. Just select the topics you want to review from the main menu. Watch for more QuickPro guides on using newly released cameras. Thanks for watching.